Hi, everyone. I'm Katie Couric, and this is Yahoo News Live. Humans of New York creator Brandon Stanton usually lets the subject of his photos do the talking. His hugely popular blog and book offers snapshots of everyday people, not only on the streets of New York, but all over the world, and gives us a glimpse into their lives. But on Monday, he wrote a very personal, open letter to Donald Trump and posted it to his 17 million followers on Facebook, and he's here to tell us why. Hi, nice to see you. Thanks for coming by, Brandon. So first of all, I know you told me as we were getting ready to sit down here that you've been watching the election with a lot of interest and a lot of curiosity, and I'm wondering why you decided to write this open letter now.
Well, I'm a history major, so, I've always been interested in American history and American politics, so yes, I've been paying close attention. But, the blog that I have is a storytelling blog. It is telling the stories of average people on the streets. Sometimes I do it in Pakistan, Iraq, Iran, which might be more like journalism, but on average, it's just about the ordinary person. And so I didn't want to inject any divisiveness into my blog by coming out on a certain side or condemning any candidate. And as I've watched this election, and I've watched the racism and the appeals to violence, both, overt and subtle, the calculated, subtle ones that I'm going to throw up my hands and deny later on, I've just grown more and more and more disturbed. And I started to feel guilty. I started to feel a moral guilt that here I am seeing something that I feel very strongly about. I am seeing someone who is inflaming violence and prejudice into America, and I'm keeping quiet about it for political reasons. And so then I decided it's not a political choice to stay silent. It's a moral one. And by staying silent, I'm making the incorrect moral choice.
So that you pretty much encapsulated sort of the first paragraph of your open letter to Donald Trump. You said that, you didn't want to take sides in a contentious election, but then you came to the realization, quote, opposing Donald Trump is no longer a political decision, it is a moral one. You go on to write, and I thought you could read a portion of your letter if you could, Brandon.
I said, I've watched you retweet racist images. I've watched you retweet racist lies. I've watched you take 48 hours to disavow white supremacy. I've watched you joyfully encourage violence and promise to pay the legal fees of those who commit violence on your behalf. I've watched you advocate the use of torture and the murder of terrorist families. I've watched you gleefully tell the stories of executing Muslims with bullets dipped in pig blood. I've watched you compare refugees to snakes and claim that Islam hates us. And at the end I write, those of us who have been paying attention will not allow you to rebrand yourself. You are not a unifier. You are not presidential. You are not a victim of the very anger that you've joyfully inflamed for months. You are a man who has encouraged prejudice and violence in the pursuit of personal power. And though your words will no doubt change over the next few months, you will always remain who you are.
Do you think Donald Trump is a racist? You accuse him of retweeting racist comments. Would you call him a racist himself?
He is a man. If he is not a racist, he is a man who is making calculated appeals to racism to achieve power. And that is just as bad or worse. And when you're in the position talking to millions of people on the media every single day, you're tweeting an image where you're exaggerating the murder rate. You're saying African Americans are responsible for 81% of white murders. You're tweeting that, and you're saying I'm not a racist? You're creating that divisiveness, and you're saying you're not a racist? You're saying 1.6 billion Muslims hate us. 1.6 billion people. You're drawing a circle around, and you're saying all those people are bad and they hate us? And you're saying you're not a racist? I don't know what racism is.
In fact, Brandon, one of the reasons you've written this open letter is because of Donald Trump's comments about Muslims, and you reference your interactions with many Muslims over the last 2 years in this open letter to Mr. Trump. Can you tell me about your experiences and why you were so galled by Donald Trump's statements about Muslims or about Syrian refugees?
So look, I've gone to Iran, Iraq, and Pakistan. I spent several weeks in each place. And I stopped random people on the streets, all of them Muslims, and I did extensive interviews with them about their lives. Those people were more welcoming and warm and willing to talk to me than any random sample of 100 people I've ever approached on the streets of New York City. Now, are there extremists in the Middle East? Are there violent people? Are there patriarchal people who oppress women? Yes, there are. These are problems that are in these countries that these countries are trying to fight within. The good people of these countries are aware of this and are trying to fight it from within. But when you take these isolated incidents, when you take these individuals that represent the worst of a people, and you draw a circle around 1.6 billion people and you say, look, that's all of them. That is racist and that is dangerous. And that is what he's doing over and over and over again.
What kind of impact, having spent so much time in that part of the world, what kind of impact do you think he is having on those populations?
That's the scariest part of it. It's the world is too dangerous for this kind of divisiveness right now. Back when we had bayonets and muskets, maybe the world could have absorbed it. But we are too armed and the world is just too unstable for a man to come into leadership of the strongest army in the world with that kind of rhetoric, that kind of impulsiveness, that kind of emphasis on victory and personal loyalty. That will just cleave the world in two. And it is far too dangerous of a time for that to be happening.
You told me that in your spare time you spend a lot of it reading books about dictators.
Well, I told you I was a history major, and I told you my guilty pleasure as a history major was reading the biographies of men who have amassed large amounts of power. It's very interesting to me, you know, because I look at the country like Germany and I say those are such smart people, and they handed their allegiance and they handed their loyalty over to a man that just led them to oblivion. And how did that happen? And how that could happen has always fascinated me. And when I read the pathology of the men who were able to make that happen, they emphasize violence, they emphasize personal loyalty over ideas, and they appeal to racism. And am I saying that Donald Trump's one of those men? He's got the qualities, and I don't want to take the chance of finding out.
A lot of people have responded to your post. It's received close to 2 million likes, maybe more at this juncture. I haven't checked in the last few hours. It got over 50,000 comments. Were you surprised that your comments resonated so much?
I was nervous. Again, you know, I'm not political, you know. I just, like, this is not something I wanted to do. This was something that I eventually felt so guilty about not doing because I felt like I was being a moral coward that eventually I wrote it and I closed my eyes and I hit post. And so, yes, the fact that it resonated and reverberated, I think it was shared 1 million times. My analytics says it went into 100 million news feeds. 100 million. Shocking to me.
I know that one of the comments, by the way, that have been overwhelmingly positive, but one was from someone named Abanti Dutta. I hope I'm pronouncing her name correctly, from India.
Okay.
And she wrote, from every other part of the world, we're wondering, how is he even getting so many votes? Are you hoping that this will instigate a global conversation?
Me, it's you know, what I want to do is not that my letter is going to change any minds, but I want people to start looking at this as a moral question and not a political question. This is not an instance of looking at a man and saying, is he the right political choice? And that by speaking out against him, I am being political. Because that's the very reason I didn't want to speak out. Because I didn't want to get political, because the moment you get political, you alienate people. But I think it's a moral question. Do you want America to become more violent and more prejudiced than it already is? And if you do not, if you are a person of influence, is it not your moral responsibility to stand up and speak out against it? And I want people to think about it in moral terms.
What about, I think about some of the people you profile, Brandon, some of whom feel alienated, disenfranchised, sort of kept out of the American dream. Not all, but some. And it seems that Donald Trump is somehow resonating among people like that who are sick of the system, feel like the government isn't working for them, feel excluded from the American dream. And I'm just interested in getting your take on those feelings that he seems to be tapping into somehow.
Well, I think to fully understand Donald Trump, you've got to acknowledge as an intelligent person that watching him as a debate, even as an intelligent person, you can feel drawn to some of the things he says. His tell it like it is, his very, straightforward ways of just exerting leadership. There's something in all of us that respond to that type of leadership. But then you need to back up and look at it from your rational brain, and you have to examine why it is that a man with that sort of personality appeals to us. And then you have to ask yourself, what are the dangers of putting someone who is so strong-headed and so impervious to other people's ideas in other parts of the world into power? And so I don't think that the people who follow him are stupid, or that they're racist. Some of them probably are, but followers of everyone, there's probably some of them that are racist. But I think they're drawn to a personality type without a full consideration of the dangers involved in giving that type of man power over the strongest country in the world.
At this juncture, do you think Donald Trump is unstoppable? Or it's pretty late in the game. He looks like he's going to be. I guess other things could happen and that would keep him from becoming the Republican nominee, but it looks as if he's well on his way. What do you think is going to happen if he, for example, faces Hillary Clinton in a general election? I think you expressed your concern that he's going to reposition himself.
Oh, he's already doing it, and he's saying things like he's looking into the camera, saying he's never condoned violence, he's a unifier. It's creepy to me how just confidently and assuredly he can just look into the camera and lie like that. And just say it 100 times. He talks so fast. He just talks so fast and he doesn't answer the questions. He talks so fast. And how when he says a lie over and over and over and over and over again, even if you saw him on stage, a month ago, telling someone to punch someone in the face, you hear him say I'm a nonviolent person 100 times, it starts to sow doubt into your head. And those are the people who are paying attention. And so, yes, I'm worried about his ability to shift tacks and to rebrand and start, portraying himself as a moderate person. And that's why I think it's important to draw a circle around him, saying, this is what you've done. This is who you are. It is wrong. And if you claim otherwise and that you didn't do this, you are lying.
So finally, you're hoping that this letter will make people more closely examine their own views toward Donald Trump.
I just want people to ask, at this point, is it a political decision to oppose Donald Trump? Because it's much easier to sit on the sidelines of politics. Or is it a moral decision to oppose Donald Trump? And if it's a moral decision, it's much harder to justify not speaking out.
Brandon Stanton, thanks so much for coming by.
Thank you.
We really appreciate it. Thanks for sharing your point of view with us today. And we always look forward to hearing what you all have to say. You can follow me on Facebook and Twitter at Katie Couric. And of course, you can follow Yahoo News Live, Yahoo News also, and use the hashtag Yahoo Live to let us know what you think about Brandon's letter to Donald Trump. I'm Katie Couric. Thanks so much for watching.